humblemud.
Hey everyone, it's good to be back, and in my first video since my little hiatus from YouTube, we're going to be discussing Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. And what a game to kick things off with. This is an indie fantasy action RPG developed by Questline and published by Awaken Realms. And the world in which this game takes place is based on Awaken's tabletop deck builder game of the same name. The devs reached out to me asking if I'd like to check it out, and so today, in celebration of the game's full 1.0 release, which boasts 3 story acts spanning about 50 to 70 hours of gameplay, and probably more if you're as slow and thorough as I am, I'm going to share my first impressions playing through Act 1 of the game. In full disclosure, the devs have no idea how I feel about Tainted Grail yet. They will be seeing this video the same time that you are. Now, I'm going to keep things as spoiler-free as possible, showing mostly early game footage and such, but before we get into everything else, let me first give you a little background on the game and its setting. The world of Tainted Grail is based on Arthurian legend, so you're going to see and hear some familiar names and terms like Knights of the Round, King Arthur, Merlin, Excalibur, Galahad, and so on. But the game differs quite heavily from typical adaptations of this classic story, and that's most apparent in the visual design department. This is a dark fantasy game with lots of haunting vistas to traverse and horrific creatures to face off against. You'll see gravity-defying environments and Lovecraftian alternate realities. The story is a play on the legend of King Arthur's return, as it takes place in a time far removed from his reign in Camelot's golden era. King Arthur is no more, and evil forces, both mystical and human, have taken over this world. People that were once good now seem to have ulterior motives, and places that once thrived are now in squalor. You yourself are an unlucky prisoner captured by the Red Priests. You wake up to another day of questioning and potential torture, but a mysterious adventurer breaks in and bails you out. I'm skipping over some of the details now, but along the way, you find one of the spirit fragments of King Arthur himself, who asks you to help him come back from the dead, retrieve Excalibur, and set things right. Of course, this is an open-world role-playing game, so how you achieve this, whether righteously or ruthlessly, who you backstab or who you choose to side with, whether you're loyal to the Knights of the Round or not, just about any key decision you can think of is ultimately up to you. Now, gameplay-wise, the best way I can describe Tainted Grail is that it's a Scrolls-like with more engaging combat. I don't even know if Scrolls-like is a term, but basically, this feels like Skyrim with a dash of Elden Ring. And I do say a dash. Enemies can certainly be difficult at times. A fight with them will get the blood pumping. There are parrying and stamina systems that are important to master. Enemies can deal a lot of damage to you if they catch you slipping. Make no mistake, things are a lot more involved even in the simplest of battles here than what you would expect to find in Skyrim, but you're also not going to bash your head over the wall trying to memorize complex patterns like you would in Dark Souls. That said, fighting this particular bandit leader while underleveled with only the weapon I had from the opening prison segment, and also while not really understanding the parry system quite yet, definitely felt like a Dark Souls battle, and it was so good to finally get him. The dude's name is Calm because he should calm down.
This is my lucky day.
It should also be noted that there are a variety of difficulty levels, and you can change them at any time in order to cater to the experience you want. I played on Adventurer, which is the default difficulty I believe, but there's also a Veteran difficulty above that, as well as the more forgiving Explorer and much more forgiving Story difficulty. When the devs reached out to me with their initial pitch, they initially explained that you can be just about anything, from an alchemist berserker brute to a necromancer to a stealthy hitman, and in my experience, they were absolutely right. Your initial conversation with the guard in the prison sets up your default abilities, and you can choose between a variety of backgrounds for your character, but once you get past that, it's up to you how you invest the points into your skill tree and increase your general attributes like strength or dexterity. Those familiar with the Elder Scrolls games will feel right at home because just like those games, you level up your abilities like two-handed weapon fighting, cooking, alchemy, agility, archery, parrying, and so on by actually performing those actions in the game world. There are guilds to join, there's character customization, there's a day and night cycle. Also, there are smut novels. And while NPC behavior isn't as robust or dynamic as something like Shenmue or Oblivion, NPCs do at least go to bed and can be seen doing different things at different times of the day. When it comes to my character, I generally tried to roleplay as helpful and level-headed, doing what I thought was right, but my loyalties to various factions were ambiguous, and sometimes I would prioritize myself over others, and that's where I personally had a lot of fun when it came to certain decision-making in my playthrough. As far as my general build went, I intended to be a battle mage, but ended up putting a lot of points into stamina and stealth as I went on just to complement the fighting style that I adopted most naturally. As a result, my character is a bit of a jack of all trades right now as I kept my options open, usually investing points based on the requirements for the gear that I would find in the overworld. It does appear that there are options to respec your character if you end up building in a way that you don't find conducive to how you want to play. With a recent playthrough of Dark Messiah of Might and Magic still being fresh on my mind, as well as my immense hype for Doom the Dark Ages, it should be of no surprise that I'm a sucker for dark fantasy environments. I really enjoy how at nighttime the mystical world of the weirdness blends into the corporeal realm, and you'll find yourself surrounded by vengeful spirits, fog, and ethereal golden glows coating the dilapidated buildings around you. It's sort of like a more metal take on the nightfalls that you'd see in Zelda Ocarina of Time, or the Twilight Realm in Twilight Princess. I love a little metal and a little cosmic horror in my fantasy games and settings, and Tainted Grail delivers on that in spades. But it also gives you a completely opposite flavor with your more traditional medieval castles, villages, and forests, and personally, something I don't think we see enough of in these types of games, beaches. That's a big reason I latched on to games like Riven, and the water here just looks fantastic in this game. Plus, there's fishing. Also, there are smut novels. And just like how they give you a healthy serving of light and dark in their set pieces, the storylines often go in places you don't expect either. You might find yourself going into the mind of a tormented soul deeply entrenched in the weirdness, or you might happen upon someone who's obsessed with a particular cheesy seafood dish and is just eager to share the recipe with you. The game provides beautifully nightmarish designs in its creatures and mounts, but it also has its own version of Bethesda's infamous horse armor as well. I even heard a Monty Python and the Holy Grail joke at one point in my play session. There is a lot more humor in this game than you'd expect, and you can tell the devs had fun making this game. I really enjoyed never knowing what was around the corner, be it hilarious or terrifying. There are characters you'll get into conversation with and start to get the impression that they may be much older than they appear, but when you ask about that, they'll kind of skirt around the answer. You'll likely find clues around the environment lending credence to the fact that they may be ancient or of some other worldly significance, so it'll cause you to make a mental note and check in on them later. Meanwhile, some characters outright declare that they're a person of legend or perhaps are immortal, but when you complete a quest for them and they reward you with their powers, quote unquote, or give you some kind of useless item, you'll start to wonder if they were just messing with you. There are also a lot of little details that kept me immersed in this game's world. Take the Grindilo enemies, for example. When you defeat this ugly little guy for the first time, you obtain a bio on it, and there it's stated that they are known for stealing children's toys. Sure enough, when you loot its body, you'll likely find some. Another little moment that stood out to me in this way was when I was exploring some ruins in this beachy area, and I happened upon a particularly scenic area where the sunlight comes through nicely. It was unfortunately surrounded by zombies though, and after dispatching them, I found a young man and woman who met their demise here. When I checked their bodies, I found rings on both of them, and it made me think that presumably they were a newlywed couple who got a little too comfortable taking in the view and unfortunately weren't watching their backs. Numerous areas around the game are like this, where once you clear an area of enemies, you can take a step back and see the crime scene or conflict that must have occurred here prior to your arrival, and moments like these really give this game a handcrafted feel that adds to the overall world building. Also, with that said, I did have a few issues during my playthrough thus far. Nothing game-breaking or that really hampered my personal experience, but still noteworthy. The first is that I do think there is room for improvement when it comes to optimization. Now, to be fair, I don't have the most state-of-the-art system by any means. I'm currently running an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050 graphics card, the 8GB VRAM model, so I'm due for an upgrade. But even on the lowest settings, I'd noticed some occasional frame rate issues here and there, and unfortunately the frames stutter between 40 to 60 quite often if I run things even a little above the low graphical settings. Thankfully, the game is still quite pretty though, even on the lowest settings as you can see, but I thought this was worth mentioning. And yes, you can pet the horse. You can also noticeably tell that environmental details sort of fill in or pop in with more detail as you get closer, which could sometimes be distracting. Another thing I noticed is that whenever I'd perform a spell for the first time, there would often be a hitch. Things usually smooth out after that initial cast though. I noticed this with the very first fireball I threw in the prologue actually, but unfortunately my footage of that section got corrupted so I couldn't show it here. All the prison footage I've shown in this video was redone on a new save, by the way, just in case you were wondering. When it comes to the audio department, Tainted Grail has a dynamic music system like we've come to expect in open world games, and the music is great from everything I've heard. However, you can tell sometimes the game doesn't know exactly which song it should play. If you move just outside of the enemy's aggro line temporarily, or if you take down the immediate threat right in front of you, the music tries to get back to its ambient theme sometimes, even if you can clearly see 2 or more enemies not too far away. I also noticed it would sometimes struggle to select a music track if I was just running quickly through different environments. Luckily, I enjoy all the songs, so it wasn't something that bothered me too much, but I thought it was worth mentioning. There are minor visual glitches like NPCs having restless leg syndrome, and there was this weird buoyancy effect that stuck with me even when I was on land after swimming, and it almost made me feel like my character got seasick. If you ever run into this issue, you can fix it by going into third person mode and back into first person, by the way. Voice lines can also occasionally get cut off when you're in conversation. In my playthrough, this was few and far between, but I know the devs are aware of this issue. And lastly, this is subjective, but I found the default control mapping on PC to be kind of odd. Your items are used by X, switching to another item in the quick slot is C, dashing is Alt, and the spacebar is jump. That's a lot of different commands all in one place and a lot for just your thumb to navigate. After some experimentation, what worked best for me was mapping dash to space and jump to Alt, because realistically you're not going to be jumping around as much as you're going to dash. If you have extra buttons on your mouse, I'd highly recommend mapping your quick slots to those mouse buttons. This way, your left thumb can rest comfortably on the spacebar 90% of the time instead of curving in on the Alt key for your dash or fumbling around to select items. And it made the whole experience feel much better for me. What I like about Tainted Grail the most though, and if there's anything I'd want you to take away from this video watching it now, there is clearly a lot of love and passion poured into this game. I wasn't able to immediately get to Tainted Grail when they first sent it to me, but I was pleased to see patches rolling out throughout April. And they even did a pretty big patch on the 1.0 build that I've been playing prior to the actual public release of the game. I always view stuff like this when we're talking about an indie game as promising. The devs acknowledge that there are areas that aren't perfect yet, but state they're actively working on it and then walk the walk with patch notes. They have a dedicated Discord room so people can report any issues they find, and they have even added features that they didn't originally intend to purely because the fans asked for it, like the ability to switch between first and third person. And really quick, on that note, while they made it very clear that the third person mode isn't perfect yet as the game was built around first person, I personally haven't had any issues with it myself and even found fighting in third person preferable against certain enemies, or at least a nice way to mix things up. One of the weapons I enjoyed the most in my playthrough was the spear I found, which I'm sure you're seeing in the footage, and spears were actually added to the game pretty recently. All of the issues I found and listed earlier didn't detract enough from my experience to make me want to stop playing. Overall, I'm very impressed with Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. One thing I wanted to touch on before I wrap this thing up is how similar this game is to Bethesda RPGs, especially Skyrim. While one person might look at this game and dismiss it as simply a Skyrim clone, I personally think this game sets itself apart quite a bit in tone and game feel, while admittedly borrowing a lot of the things that you can expect in a game like Skyrim. And honestly, I don't think terms like clone should even be a pejorative. Think of all the games inspired by Doom or Quake over the years. Think of all the action-adventure games released on Sega platforms back in the day in response to the success of Zelda. Friendly competition is good, and I think Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon can sit comfortably in a gaming library that also has some Elder Scrolls in it, and the biggest reason for that is its focus on combat. I really liked that this game wasn't afraid to put me in my place. There were several moments where I would get beat down and I had to reassess my strategies. Entering a battle with a new weapon I've never used before to see if that helped, or applying something like poison to my blade and downing potions left and right because I needed every edge I could get against a particular boss. When I first started the game, I relied way too heavily on dashing at first, but eventually met some opponents who made me get good at parrying. And the Arthurian legend stuff that this game has is weaved into Tainted Grail's setting and tone so well that it feels natural and unique, not shoehorned in. The pacing of this game is great, and it's always fun to run around and check out the next thing because there are almost always nice rewards to find. The sound design is great, the voice acting is great, the music is awesome, and lastly, I can confirm that there are branching storylines. There were many times where I would make 2 save files before a big decision just so I could see the different outcomes and decide which one I liked best. Conversations change depending on the order in which you do quests, and I like how many things you can do seemingly out of order without hurting your overall experience. Though I still have a lot of game ahead of me, I'm happy to say that at least right now, this is the most fun I've had and the most immersed I've been in a game sent to me by an indie developer since Eve of Calamity last year. And if you've been around the channel for a long time, you know that's high praise. I think that this particular brand of Scrolls-like gameplay with more focused combat, as well as a darker overall aesthetic and unexpected but welcome humor, has been the thing I've been waiting for ever since the first time I played Skyrim on the 360 all those years ago. I just didn't know it yet until now. Tainted Grail has been such a great experience for me so far, truly. Definitely let me know what you think about Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon, whether that's based on what I've shared here or if you've played it yourself. I'd love to know your thoughts. I will absolutely do a follow-up once I beat the rest of the game, especially if you all are interested. And lastly, I just wanted to give a huge thanks to Awaken Realms and Questline for sending this to me, and to you as well. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay humble.